very much for joining us here on Rising India. The last time we spoke was in June of last year at the CNN News 18 Town Hall. You've become an even bigger rock star on social media and on traditional media since then. But let's talk brass tacks. Last June when we last spoke, the Russia-Ukraine war was just 3 months in. Now it's over a year. Did you expect this war to continue this long? And how has it changed global geopolitics? How has it changed your job in the last year?
Well, it was, I don't think it's a fair question to say, did you expect something to happen or not? Because a lot of people didn't expect the conflict to happen at all. But many things have changed. Many things have changed because the West has changed. Definitely, Europe has changed. Russia's relationship with the West has changed. I think that has other consequences. My sense is Russia's relationship with Asia will consequently change because it will turn more eastwards than it has done in its history for a long time. In many ways, issues like energy security, food security have come to the fore. It's also opened up a bit of a north-south divide. So at the moment you have a east-west friction and a north-south divide. So it's really made the world a much more difficult place.
So when you say the world has become a much more difficult place, a country like India, we are the voice of the global south. We also have very deep linkages with the West and, of course, with the East. How does India play these deep divisions?
Well, we are, to a great extent, the voice of the global south because I think, one, there is a natural empathy from our similar history, but also because we have made an effort. I mean, it's not something which just happened by itself. You've had G20 summits before. To the best of my knowledge, no other country said, okay, we are 20 countries around the table. There are 180 countries which are not around this table. So should we make an effort to find out what their expectations are of us? I think, to the best of my knowledge, we are the first country to have done that. And we actually, starting with Prime Minister himself and, 5 of us, including Piyush, who was here before me, we all spoke to our counterparts. We actually consulted 125 nations with this one question, which is we're going into G20, so tell us your key concerns and what is it we can articulate. That's one part of it. I think the other part of it is also we have in this whole period since February 24th last year, we have tried to press for you can say a return to peace, a return to negotiations. Yeah. In that sense, we have taken an independent position. I wouldn't say we're the only ones, but we certainly are among the more prominent ones. I do believe there is a real body of opinion out there, including in the G20. Mm-hmm. I would say a country like, say, Mexico or Brazil or Argentina or Indonesia, Saudi Arabia. I think many of them share similar views. Probably we've been the more outspoken among them. So both in terms of the north-south divide as well as the east-west polarization, I think we have tried to be the bridging force there. And the world needs somebody like us.
So you're talking about the G20, and of course, this is a big year for India. The session is called India's G20 moment. But how worried are you that there's so much fixation around a joint statement or the lack of it at the end of one? Because we had the foreign ministers meeting, you chaired that a few weeks ago. We had an outcome document, I believe, not a joint communique. Similarly, again, in the finance ministers meeting. Is there too much fixation on a joint statement?
Well, let me speak about the one which
Sure.
I chaired. We had a meeting. We had a outcome. We were negotiating essentially a 24-paragraph document. We had agreement on 22 paragraphs. There were 2 paragraphs pertaining to Ukraine, which basically was a carry forward of what happened at Bali, on which we could not get agreement. So, in a sense, we had to do a chair summary for the
Sure.
part we couldn't, and the outcome document for the part we could. Now, we have to be real about it. I mean, look at the state of the world. In this state of the world, if I could get 22 out of 24, so what's that in percentage terms?
About
So
95.
95%. Okay, I never got 95% in school. So I would say, I was not dissatisfied. I would have obviously liked to get 100%, which would have been a novel experience for me. But
You were one of your toppers in the services. You went to a top university.
well, we'll put that aside.
We'll park that aside.
No, but look, my point is, what we really managed to do in the G20. I agree with you that one shouldn't be textually obsessed, though text does matter.
Sure.
I think our real contribution was to get the G20 back to the G20's real business. The G20 is not the UN Security Council. It's not the primary forum to debate international peace and security. I'm not saying international peace and security doesn't matter or doesn't have economic consequences. They do. But if you look today at the world, there are serious issues for the world to worry about. Food and energy security, green financing, Agenda 2030, trade issues, debt issues. We actually got something very novel for G20 to look at, and which I would like to build on, which is something called global skills mapping. That where are the skills in the world and where is the demand in the world? And they are in 2 different geographies.
Yeah.
So how do we actually put that together? I think that's a very interesting avenue that we have opened up for the G20. So the original mandate of the G20 was global growth and development. Now, last year, because of the Ukraine conflict, I think the conversations went in the direction of one issue. We would like to see, without disrespecting that particular issue, we would like to see a return to what we believe matters most to the roughly 200 countries of the world. And in that sense, I would say more than getting 22 out of 24. I would take satisfaction in the fact that the finance ministers meeting in Bangalore and Bengaluru and my meeting in Delhi, we were able to get the G20 back on track.
So you're confident that in September, when the leaders meet, a bulk of the conversations will be around the issues that you just outlined?
I would say, yes, that should be the progression. Every G20, there is a strong element of continuity. And there are some new ideas which come in. My sense is that you would see some ideas come in as well. Probably a bit early, may take a few meetings more for that to move. But I would certainly hope that by September, we would have a G20 leaders meeting which would look at the crucial issues pertaining to global growth and global development.
Sure. So one of the consequences, I guess, because of the war, or perhaps it's been accentuated because of the war, is the world is increasingly looking like 2 blocks. You have the United States and its partners on the one side, and you have Russia and China on the other, most of all because of what happened last week when Xi Jinping went to Moscow. What do you make of that? And how, again, I come back to this, how does a country like India play that? Because we are in neither camp.
I think you are oversimplifying this, deliberately so, I understand.
The journalist occupational
yes,
hazard.
Yes, absolutely, I get that. I'll tell you why you're oversimplifying it. it's not, Russia and China versus the West
Sure.
in that simplistic a term. After all, the primary partner, economic partner of China is the West, and the primary economic partner of the West is China. So they have an enormous amount of economic interface there. Where Russia is concerned, I would actually go back to my initial point, which is, I think one of the natural consequences of the Ukraine conflict is that Russia, a Eurasian power which has historically looked much more towards Europe, today finds its relationships with the West very, very difficult. So that Russia is inclined in many ways, therefore, to turn much more to the Asian side of Russia.
Yeah.
So I would predict fairly safely, and I think the numbers this year already bear me out, that you will see an intensification in Russia's relationship with Asia as a whole. Now, you spoke about Russia, China, but I would suggest to you that many other countries in Asia, maybe not economically all of the same size, but there are some fairly consequential economies. We would number one of them. And my expectation is you will see actually Russia also show that much more interest in developing its cooperation with India. Now, if you look at the India-Russia relationship, for the last 70 years, this has been one of the most steady relationships in international relations. That, take all the major players, Russia, China, Russia, West China, you've seen enormous volatility in their relationship. Whereas from 1955, which was the year Bulganin and Khrushchev came to India, you've actually had a very, very steady, even after the breakup of the Soviet Union, actually, there was a bit of a gap there, but very quickly the relationship came back to where it was. So I do think that, yes, you will see a change in Russia's posture and priorities, but I think for India, this is also in many ways an opportunity to grow its relationship, because our relationship with Russia has been very, the bandwidth is very narrow. It has been mainly defense, nuclear and space. The trade relationship with Russia historically has been not historically, at least in the last 2-3 decades, has been very, very narrow. And you can see that grow.